So welcome everybody to this tourism networking event. As announced, this will be an event in English because we have guests from our EXTOR projects that come from all over the world. Nice to see you all. Could you speak up a little bit? I will try. I have a very low voice, but you can also come closer. I warmly welcome you on behalf of the Iceland Tourism Cluster and EXTOR, who are jointly hosting this event here today. My name is Magdalena Falter, and I'm a project manager in both of these institutions. And apart from that, I also hold a PhD in tourism studies. I'm affiliated to the University of Iceland. So every time I introduce myself, I say that I'm a researcher and a doer because I'm home in both of these worlds, in academia and in the project management world. So this project here, or this event, is part of the EXTOR project, which is an initiative funded by Erasmus+, and here are our guests. And I'm overseeing the Icelandic part of this project on behalf of EXTOR. So the reason why we are having this networking event is, first of all, that all of us, the tourism stakeholders here in Iceland, can come together, can meet and exchange and get a little bit of input, but also that our guests from the EXTOR project get to know us, get to know the Icelandic scene, and get to know about what is going on in the Icelandic tourism development. And that leads us to the topic of this afternoon, which is about tourism sustainability and regenerative tourism. And regenerative tourism is a rather new paradigm, both in academia and also in the practical world. And the Iceland Tourism Cluster has been riding this wave of regenerative tourism from the very beginning by leading which was back then a pilot project, Nordic, stands for Nordic Regenerative Tourism. So let me quickly show you what we're going to do today. So I will start with a super short introduction about rethinking tourism, which regenerative tourism is about. Then Ásta, which probably most of you or all of you know, the CEO of the Iceland Tourism Cluster, will give a short overview about the tourism cluster, about the sustainability journey the tourism cluster is doing and all these initiatives that are going on at the moment. And then we hear a small video contribution from Ólafur Atladóttir, who is the project leader of this project that I just mentioned, Nordic Regenerative Tourism. And we stay within the regenerative tourism for a bit, because we hear another keynote speech by Jessica Aquino and Rethinking, who work with us in the Nordic project. And now there's a little, the screen wasn't able to be moved up, but I hope you can still read it. Afterwards, our last input for today is by Rannveig Ólafsdóttir, who is a professor at the University of Iceland, and she will talk about this challenging task of measuring the success of tourism sustainability. So we'll hear a little bit about sustainability indicators. And number 6, the last part of our official agenda, I would like to invite you for an open discussion. And there, please, everybody share their stories, their thoughts, or ask any questions that might pop up, but you're also free to just pop in with questions after every keynote speech. And before we all go, we would like to invite you for some catering, some small snacks and networking. So don't rush home right away. Let's have a few snacks, connect and chat. I want to say a few words about the EXTOR project, which brings us all together here today. So I already said EXTOR is an initiative funded by Erasmus+, and it stands for Experiential Tourism for Sustainable Rural Development. And in a nutshell, it is about supporting sustainable growth in rural areas. And a big focus, and we have been discussing this now for the last 2 days, is on rural tourism entrepreneurs. Because we all know how it is, rural tourism businesses, they are having many hats. They are like the manager, the receptionist, they're making beds, sometimes they're the chefs, they're doing everything. And they are so busy, so that's the reason why they're sometimes lagging behind in skills, depending on regards to digital innovation, sustainability, video making, social media. And one of the main goals of EXTOR is to upskill these rural tourism entrepreneurs. If you want to learn more about the project, this QR code leads to the Facebook page. Now this screen is still down, so I don't know if you can scan it, but I can share the presentation with you afterwards. And we're also going to record the keynote speeches here today, so we're going to upload them in the EXTOR page and you can access them there. And also in the networking later. So these are all our EXTOR members. There's plenty of time to connect and find out more about the project. Maybe one more thing. Could you all sign the attendance list? That would be very great. Just going to pass it through. Yeah, this event today is about tourism, sustainability, and regenerative tourism. And these are both pretty big concepts. And it is an ongoing challenge for us to figure out how can we be sustainable in tourism. And this means that we humans have to change our pattern. This means we have to change the way that we are behaving. And to get us started with this big and maybe also a bit overwhelming topic, I want to talk a little bit about rethinking tourism and why we have to talk about rethinking, why we're still doing it. And be it sustainable tourism or responsible tourism, and of course also regenerative tourism, all these concepts are a call for us humans to rethink what we are doing, to change our behavior and to do less harm to the earth. And this stems from the fact that the tourism industry, as it is now, and I'm not talking about Iceland or any specific country, I'm talking about the global tourism industry, is currently very growth-oriented and is constantly striving for more and more growth. And even though the global tourism authorities are communicating that they are envisioning more and more sustainability, in the background they continue with business as usual, and that's capitalism striving for more growth. So there is a gap between theory, where everybody wants sustainability in tourism, and practice, where capitalism is taking over. Oops, not yet. And the issue that we, the humans, are over-consuming our planet to excess. You see on the slide very well, we are fighting over the resources of the earth, not noticing that we are destroying the earth by doing so. This is a big issue in tourism. I'm pretty sure all of you have come across this in some aspect already, just when you think about mass tourism. And discussions on how to increase tourism sustainability, they are nothing new. They have been ongoing since the 1990s, or even longer. And this is something that especially it's interesting for us academics. It's being criticized a lot in academia at the moment. And voices are getting louder and they say, hey, why are we still talking about the same questions? Why didn't we figure out yet what tourism sustainability means? Why are we still asking questions? Why don't we have answers? And this thought that we are over-consuming our earth, that we are abusing our earth, this is something that shows very beautifully in the German ballad The Sorcerer's Apprentice by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Do you know that? Yeah, it's a German ballad. And in a nutshell, it is about a wizard and his apprentice. And the wizard says one day, okay, I have to go to town. While I'm gone, here's a broom, here's a bucket, I want you to clean the apartment. Water is out there in the fountain. So he leaves, and the wizard's apprentice is left with this task. He starts to do that, and very soon he figures out that it's pretty boring and pretty hard way to always walk out and get the water. So he forbiddenly goes to the wizard's magic book and casts up a spell and puts it on the broom. So the broom gets the water in the bucket. And in the beginning he's very proud of himself because his life is easier. And then he figures out after like an hour or so that the broom doesn't stop bringing water and the apartment's getting flooded. So he gets a bit nervous, he tries to use some magic, it doesn't work, the broom continuously brings more water. So he gets a bit panicky. At some point he gets so angry that he just takes the broom and breaks it into pieces. But what happens is that the broom doesn't stop bringing water, just two parts of the broom started to bring water. And even more flood came into the apartment. And that's the moment when he just starts losing it and starts to panic and starts to cry for help. And that is when the wizard comes back, brings up the right spell and saves him. And I bring that up because I stumbled across an article by John Urry from 2010, and he compared this tourism growth orientation, this capitalism, and this striving for more and more economic profit. He compares this to the sorcerer's apprentice, like being full of ourselves, unleashing a power that we can't control anymore, being greedy and setting something in motion that we are not even aware of, where it leads us in the end. And that's why it is so important that we rethink. And rethinking or regenerative tourism in general has a lot to do with values and understanding the individuals and understanding like why do we act the way we act or why do we not act the way we're supposed to act. And that is something that is being criticized a lot in literature at the moment, in academia, that the tourism authorities do not take these values, these ethical principles, enough into consideration when they talk about tourism sustainability. It's still about this hard fact. It's still about like what does the tourism industry need? What do the tourists need? But very seldom it is about well-being, well-being of the environment or well-being of the community, like well-being of the places where tourism is actually happening. And these researchers argue that this issue should become more a matter of inner sustainability and a matter of the soul, instead of just like some political requirements that we have to follow just to have a check on the list. And recently, more and more focus has been put on the potential role of rural tourism entrepreneurs. And that's also what we focus on in our EXTOR project, or Nordic, or the Iceland tourism cluster in general. And in regenerative tourism, these tourism businesses in the countryside, they are called agents of degrowth sometimes. And I find this very interesting, of course. And just a clarification of word degrowth doesn't mean that they are going for financial ruin and they try to run the tourism industry down. There's a very popular tourism researcher, his name is Michael Hall, I think he's from the UK or the States. And he said for him degrowth is finding the right size. And in some places finding the right size means of course that we have to have less tourism, but in other places it can mean that we need more tourism in order to hit this right size. And the reason why more and more light is being shed on these small tourism businesses in the countryside is that a lot of researchers, and there I include myself also, have figured out that they have a certain emotional attachment to the place where they live and where they have their business. And we all know that when we care about something, we try to do as little harm as possible, or even we try to do good to this place. And in the case of these tourism entrepreneurs, this manifests in that they, for example, support local businesses, they support strategies for the environment, they do something good for the local communities, just these small things. And that is what this inner sustainability is about, like sustainable actions that come from somebody's own will to want to do something good, and not from some political requirements or because somebody asks you to do so. And this is also why we are focusing on these entrepreneurs in our projects. And in one of my recent publications, I was looking at exactly that, like what is the role of these rural tourism entrepreneurs in this rethinking process. And I looked at this in the case of Iceland, and I super shortly want to share some of my findings with you and highlight like what I mean when I say that these entrepreneurs are agents of degrowth, and that this all stems from the fact that they just care for the place where they have the business and the community that they are in. And for that I want to show you two citations. So I was doing a lot of interviews with tourism entrepreneurs all around Iceland, and this is an entrepreneur from South Iceland, from Reykjavík, and she said, Vik is a drive-through town for Icelanders. They don't see any reason to stop here. And what we have done is make people pull over and say, what is this town? So, as simple as it is, this is caring for the local community because they are so proud that the establishment of their businesses actually changed the image of the town, that it did something positive for the community. And that's part of sustainability. Or the next entrepreneur, this is a business from the very remote East Fjords, and he said, a lot of things don't pay off that we do, but it is nice for the community. You know, I make a party because I know this will make the community happier. We are responsible towards the community, we are part of the community. This would not happen if it was not our hometown and if we were not a vital business for the town. So he hosts events even though he doesn't make profit out of it right away. And that's caring for community. That's caring for the community he and his business are embedded in. And that's sustainability. And these are just a few examples because I traveled all around Iceland. I spoke to more than 30 tourism entrepreneurs, and there are plenty of examples like this. Like, for example, a very remote other community just hosted riding courses for kids in the summer, so the kids don't have to go so far, so that there's life in this community. Or another business provided a pool for the same reasons, so that the communities are not dying out. And what I found interesting there was when we look at the official vision of how the tourism authorities would like to have tourism here in Iceland. And that's exactly that. It's caring for local communities, improving life quality for locals, and having a form of tourism where both locals and tourists benefit from. Just to name a few. And I'm a researcher, so I like to detect gaps, and that's exactly one of these gaps that I found. Because I got the impression that these businesses that I was talking to did not think that they were part of this bigger strategy. They just said, no, I do my thing anyways, I do what's good for me, for my business, for my family, for my community, but I didn't feel that they were key actors in this big rethinking process. And when I talked to the tourism authorities, I didn't get the impression that they thought that these businesses were vital for this process either. They said, yeah, I mean, they are doing good, but they do it anyways. So we have the same goals, but very few touch points. And I have another citation from a tourism business owner from the remote West Fjords. And he said, the system is so broken. The companies and the system, they are not talking together. This is just like there's not an understanding between these two groups what we are doing. So even though these two groups have similar goals, they are not having the feeling that they're working on the same mission. And that's such a waste of resources. And during my research, I got the feeling that there are hints that a reason for this gap, for this lack of working together, could be that these two groups are not communicating well enough and that they are not communicating in the way that they understand each other. And we all know in politics and in policy, there's the tendency to speak in very big terms, like sustainability, innovation, digitalization. These are all terms that are very big and difficult to understand because not all of us know what does it mean to be digitally savvy. What does it require to be innovative, or how am I a sustainable business? And I also figured out that most of the tourism businesses are not really interested in these theoretical concepts. They just want to do something good. They want to see action. They want to help their business, their families, their communities, and not add on more theoretical concepts. And I have one last citation for you. This is a business owner from West, Magdalena, from your area. And he said, we are here, we make the food and work with the ideas. And if you speak to these people, and with these people he meant the researchers, the tourism authorities, everything is closed. So this world is really different, and I don't want to be there. I think you couldn't say it any better. So even though the tourism businesses and the authorities have the same mission, they are not working together. And I sometimes call this metaphorically that they are not speaking the same language. And this could lead to a them versus us situation, where we are like both groups go into the same direction, but do not joining forces. So I think for us as a food for thought, this is very important to have in mind when we are trying to bring stakeholders together. And it is so important that we instigate opportunities where we have these open conversations between tourism stakeholders, where we figure out like what language do we need to speak. And I also think it's important that we are not adding more and more theoretical concepts, but that we are adding stories and that we are providing platforms where we can tell these stories. So that's an essential starting point for us to work together, for all these groups to work together in the end. So that's it from my side. Does anybody want to say something about it? Comment, questions?